You're earning $75,000 a year. You're working harder than anyone you know. And yet, every single month feels like a high speed chase towards zero. You look at your bank account and it doesn't make sense. The math says you should be comfortable, but your reality feels like survival. You've probably told yourself you just need a bigger raise or maybe a better budgeting app. But here's the contradiction: more money won't fix this. In fact, for most people, more money just makes the leak bigger. The real reason you're feeling stuck isn't a math skills issue, it's a biological glitch. Your brain has been programmed to view financial growth as a threat to your safety. And until you identify the 5 specific neural patterns that are keeping you in broke mode, you will continue to self sabotage, no matter how many zeros you add to your paycheck. If you don't fix this now, you're not just losing money, you're losing the next 10 years of your life to a cycle you could have broken today. Think about the last time you had an extra $500. Maybe it was a small bonus or a tax refund. Did you feel a sense of peace, or did you immediately start thinking about what that money could buy? Most of us think we're making a conscious choice to spend, but your brain is actually running an old survival script. This is the first sign of a broke brain. You use money as an emotional regulator rather than a tool for freedom. When you're stressed after a long day at your $80,000 job, your fear center, the amygdala, is screaming for a hit of safety. Your brain knows that a new purchase triggers a temporary dopamine spike that numbs that stress. You aren't bad with money. You're just using your wallet as a biological thermostat to cool down a heated brain. But here's where it gets dangerous. The more you use money to feel better, the more your brain wires those two things together. Eventually, you can't feel calm unless you're spending. Does that sound like freedom to you, or does it sound like a trap? But why does the brain choose spending over saving, even when we know saving is better for us? This leads us to the second sign, and it's something neuroscientists call the future self gap. When you think about yourself 10 years from now, your brain doesn't actually see you. MRI studies show that when people imagine their future selves, the brain activity looks almost identical to when they are thinking about a complete stranger. This is a massive broke brain pattern. To your primitive brain, saving $500 for retirement feels like giving $500 to a stranger on the street. It feels like a loss. Your rewired brain, however, has to learn how to bridge that gap. You have to trick your biology into realizing that the person 10 years from now is the one who will pay for the decisions you make at 2 p.m. today. If you feel a physical ping of pain when you put money into savings, that's your brain's loss aversion kicking in. It thinks you're being robbed of the present moment. But ask yourself, who are you really protecting? The person you are right now, or the stranger you're becoming? This brings us to a pattern that keeps even high earners trapped in a cycle of middle class poverty. It's the habit of cost first filtering. Be honest, when you look at a new opportunity, a course, or even a healthy meal, is the very first thing you check the price tag? Broke mode thinking treats every dollar as a loss to be avoided. You see the $2,000 cost of a certification that could double your salary, and your brain treats it like a $2,000 injury. You're focused on the outflow. Wealthy mode thinking, or a rewired brain, focuses on the value loop. They don't ask, what does this cost? They ask, what does this produce? If you're earning $60,000 and you're afraid to spend $1,000 on something that generates $10,000 in value, you aren't being frugal. You're being biologically short-sighted. Your brain is trying to protect the crumbs while the whole cake is sitting just out of reach. But why is your brain so afraid of that outflow in the first place? The answer lies in something that happened to you long before you ever had a bank account. Most of our financial programming is locked in by age 7. If you grew up in a house where money was a source of tension, or where rich people were talked about as if they were fundamentally different or lucky, your brain built a neural map of what's possible for someone like you. This is the identity anchor. You might be earning $90,000 now, but if your internal identity is still anchored to that childhood feeling of not enough, your brain will subconsciously look for ways to get rid of the excess money to return to its set point. This is why lottery winners go broke. This is why people get a $10,000 raise and somehow end up with $10,000 more in credit card debt. Your brain is literally trying to fix the problem of having too much because having more feels like a violation of who you think you are. You're trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation made of sand. And this leads to the most visible sign of all. It's the cognitive load of status. We live in a world where your brain is constantly scanning for social hierarchy. To your old brain, being at the bottom of the tribe meant that you were the most likely to be left behind or eaten by a predator. So when you see your peers buying the new SUV or the designer watch, your brain interprets your lack of those things as a survival threat. You're buying the status symbol not because you're vain, but because your brain is trying to buy a sense of belonging and safety. But here's the irony. The more you spend to look like you've made it, the more stress you put on your logical brain to manage the debt. You're trading your actual survival for the appearance of it. You're exhausting your neural resources just to maintain a facade that nobody is actually looking at as closely as you think they are. Now, here's where things get interesting. Most people hear this and think the fix is just more willpower. They think they need to try harder. But you can't out-willpower your biology. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical decisions, is like a tiny muscle and it gets tired easily. Your broke brain habits, however, are like a massive automated factory. If you want to change the output, you have to change the machinery. You have to start rewiring the way your brain perceives money. Instead of seeing it as something you spend or save, you have to start seeing it as stored energy. When you save $1, you're not losing $1. You're storing potential energy for your future self to use. When you stop buying things to impress people you don't even like, you're not missing out. You're reclaiming the cognitive energy you need to actually build wealth. So how do you actually start the rewiring process? It starts with a pattern interrupt. The next time you're about to make a purchase that isn't a necessity, stop and wait 48 hours. This isn't just a budgeting tip, it's a neurological hack. By waiting, you're allowing the emotional dopamine spike to subside, giving your logical prefrontal cortex a chance to come back online. You're training your brain that desire does not have to equal action. You're building a new neural pathway, one that values control over instant gratification. Think about where you'll be 5 years from now if you don't make this shift. You'll be 5 years older, likely earning more, but feeling exactly the same amount of pressure. The numbers on the screen will change, but the feeling in your chest won't. But if you start noticing these 5 signs today, if you realize that your brain is just running an outdated survival script, you can start to write a new one. You can move from broke mode survival into a rewired state of abundance, where money is no longer a source of stress, but a source of power. And once you start noticing these patterns, something strange happens. You begin to see that the block isn't just about how you spend. It's about a deeper biological barrier that stops you from even seeing wealth as a possibility, which is exactly what I break down in this video.